Welcome to this Grade 8 Science Explainer. Today, we are exploring one of the most miraculous and honestly most essential processes on planet Earth, photosynthesis. If you've ever looked outside at a towering tree and wondered how it actually got so big, well, you're in the exact right place.
Okay, let's start off with a bit of a mystery. Picture a massive tree in your mind. Where does all that heavy wood, the thick bark, and the thousands of leaves actually come from? Does the plant just eat the dirt around it? Does the mass come entirely from the water it drinks? Or does it somehow come from the air? Most people assume it has to be the soil, right?
But here is the surprising truth. Most of a tree's mass actually comes from carbon dioxide in the air. Yes, literally thin, invisible air is captured and transformed into solid, heavy wood and leaves. I know, it sounds a lot like magic, but I promise you it's pure science.
Let's really dive into this. The magic word here is photosynthesis. Now, if we break that down, the term actually comes from two Greek roots. Photo means light, and synthesis means putting together. So photosynthesis is quite literally the process where plants convert light energy into chemical energy to put together their own food.
Here's a quick roadmap for today's explainer. We'll uncover the secret of plant growth, take a trip inside the plant factory, map out the photosynthesis equation, walk through the two main stages, and finally, look at why photosynthesis matters.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the secret of plant growth, and how plants get their energy. Unlike you and me, plants do not eat food. They are what biologists call autotrophs. An autotroph is just an organism that can make its own food. Because they don't have to hunt or forage, but instead act as self-feeders, they form the absolutely essential base of the entire food chain. They capture energy and essentially make life possible for everything else on the planet.
Moving right along to Section 2, inside the plant factory, looking specifically at the anatomy of a leaf.
It helps to think of a leaf as a highly efficient manufacturing plant. The cuticle on top is like a raincoat. It's a waxy layer preventing vital water loss. Right below that, the palisade mesophyll cells act like solar panels, packed tightly together to catch as much sunlight as they possibly can. Then you have the xylem and phloem. These act as the factory's delivery trucks, transporting water up from the roots and carrying the produced sugar away to the rest of the plant. Finally, the stomata are like doorways. They're tiny pores mostly on the bottom of the leaf that constantly open and close to let carbon dioxide in and oxygen out.
And now, if we zoom way down into those palisade solar panel cells, we'll find the actual food factory organelles. These are called chloroplasts. This is where the real magic happens. Inside the chloroplast is a pigment called chlorophyll. That's actually what gives plants their green color. And its main job is to act like a sponge, specifically absorbing energy from red and blue light waves from the sun.
Inside this tiny chloroplast factory, there are two specific areas you really need to know about. First are the thylakoids. These are stacked disc-shaped membranes. Just think of them like little green coins stacked up on top of each other, and they're what absorb the sunlight. The second area is the stroma. The stroma is the fluid-filled space that completely surrounds those stacked discs. Keep these two distinct areas in mind because this is exactly where our chemical reactions are going to take place.
Let's shift gears now to Section 3, the photosynthesis equation, basically the ultimate recipe for food. We can actually translate this whole biological process into a simple mathematical formula. First, let's just look at the word equation. It's like baking. We take carbon dioxide from the air, plus water from the soil, plus light energy from the sun. We mix them all together inside our chloroplast, and the plant produces glucose, which is a type of sugar it uses for food, and oxygen as a byproduct. And what's great is how those simple words map perfectly onto a balanced chemical equation. Don't let the chemistry scare you here. 6 molecules of CO2 plus 6 molecules of H2O yields 1 molecule of C6H12O6, which is that glucose sugar, plus 6 molecules of O2. It might look a bit complex at first glance, but it's really just the exact same recipe we just talked about translated into the language of chemistry.
Which brings us right into Section 4, the two main stages, operating a lot like a two-shift system.
So, shift number 1 is called the light-dependent reactions. As you might guess, this shift needs light, and it happens in those stacked discs, the thylakoids. Here is the step-by-step. First, the chlorophyll absorbs the sunlight. Second, that immense energy is used to actually split water molecules apart, a really cool process called photolysis. Third, splitting that water creates cellular energy currency, specifically molecules called ATP and NADP. And fourth, during the splitting of water, oxygen is released.
You know, what's absolutely wild to think about here is that the oxygen we breathe every single second is really just a plant's waste product. While they're just busily making their own food, they are casually exhaling the exact gas that keeps you, me, and every animal on Earth alive. Nature is amazing like that.
So once that energy is locked in, the factory moves to shift number 2, the light-independent reactions. You'll often hear this called the Calvin cycle. This part takes place out in the fluid stroma, and it doesn't actually need light directly. Instead, it takes in carbon dioxide from the air and uses all that ATP and NDPH energy currency we just made during shift 1 to build stable glucose. It literally builds sugar out of thin air using captured sunlight. How cool is that?
The really crucial takeaway here is how perfectly these two stages connect. Stage 1, the light-dependent phase, needs light, makes energy, and releases oxygen. Stage 2, the Calvin cycle, uses that exact energy, fixes the carbon dioxide, and makes the glucose. Neither stage can run for very long without the other. It's just this beautifully designed, endless loop of cellular manufacturing.
Okay, let's zoom back out for our final part, Section 5. Why photosynthesis matters, the literal foundation of life.
Just like any factory, the plant's production rate entirely depends on its supplies and its environment. In biology, we call these limiting factors. Think about it. If light intensity drops on a cloudy day, the whole process slows down. If there isn't enough carbon dioxide, production just halts entirely. A lack of water during a drought forces the plant to close its stomata doors to save moisture, which tragically cuts off that vital CO2 supply. And temperature matters a lot too. If it gets too cold or way too hot, the plant's delicate internal enzymes get damaged and the factory shuts down.
Now, what's really fascinating is seeing how both photosynthesis and cellular respiration interact. They are quite literally two sides of the exact same coin. Plants use CO2 and water to make glucose and oxygen. But then cellular respiration, which happens inside both plants and animals, uses that very same glucose and oxygen to release energy, breathing out CO2 and water. It's this continuous, perfect cycle of matter and energy that keeps our entire ecosystem thriving.
To quickly recap our explainer today, without this microscopic process, life on Earth simply wouldn't exist, period. Photosynthesis is the absolute foundation of all food chains. It's the primary source of Earth's atmospheric oxygen. It actively regulates the global carbon cycle by pulling massive amounts of carbon out of the air. And it provides the raw materials we rely on daily, like wood, fibers, and even the ancient fossil fuels we still use today.
I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. If plants can silently turn thin air into the energy that literally powers our entire world, what other unseen microscopic miracles do you think are happening inside the leaves right outside your window? Keep asking questions, keep looking closely at the world around you, and never stop wondering. Thanks for joining us on this explainer. We'll see you next time.